The day Marcus decided to humiliate the new cleaner was the day he unknowingly signed the end of his career. Marcus Hale, vice president of operations at Westbridge Industries, believed power was measured in how small you could make others feel. His reputation for arrogance stretched across the executive floor. Still, few imagined he would target the newest hire on her very first week. She walked in quietly, dressed in the plain uniform of a janitor, her hair tied back, her steps steady. Her name tag read Elena. To Marcus, she was nothing more than background furniture, a nobody. So when he accidentally tipped his hot coffee onto the freshly polished marble floor, he sneered as though he had just tested a disposable tool. "Clean it again," he ordered coldly. "That's what you're here for." His colleagues laughed with the kind of uneasy chuckles that reveal more fear than humor. They wanted his approval, not confrontation. Elena bent down without a word, her shoulders straight, her face calm. She didn't flinch even when Marcus mocked her natural hair and tossed cruel remarks toward her back. It should have ended there, but as she finished wiping the last drop, Marcus added one more insult. "Hey, mop girl," he called loudly, making sure everyone heard. "You missed a spot." Elena stopped. She slowly turned her head and locked eyes with him. For a single moment, the room shifted. Her gaze wasn't angry. It wasn't broken. It carried something sharper. A quiet promise. Marcus, so used to being untouchable, felt a flicker of unease. His smile faltered before he quickly hit it with a dismissive wave. No one knew who Elena really was. Not yet. 3 days earlier, Elena Torres had agreed to a challenge that would change her life and her father's company forever. At a quiet dinner, her father, Samuel Torres, the seldom-seen CEO and majority shareholder of Westbridge, leaned across the table and said, "If you want to lead this company, you need to see it from the ground up. Not from a corner office, but from where the invisible people work." Samuel's health was fragile. Years of battling illness left him thinner than before, but his mind was sharp. He built Westbridge with the idea that every worker mattered. Yet whispers of corruption and discrimination had reached him, whispers he couldn't ignore. "Elena," he said, "spend 2 weeks as a janitor. Watch how they treat you. Watch who reveals their true character when they believe no one important is watching. Then you'll know what kind of company you might inherit." Elena, with her degrees in organizational leadership and a history of turning struggling firms around, accepted without hesitation. To her, this wasn't humiliation. It was truth-seeking. So, early Monday morning, she tucked away her designer bag, replaced it with a second-hand backpack, and reported to the facilities office. A supervisor gave her a uniform, mop, and supply cart with little more than a shrug. "Most floors are fine," he told her. "But be careful on the executive level. Mr. Hale is demanding." Within her first hour, she understood exactly what that meant. Marcus Hale emerged from the elevator like a storm. His tailored suit drew the attention of every nearby employee. He looked at Elena with the kind of cold amusement reserved for people who believe they are untouchable. "You're new," he said, not asking, but stating. Before she could introduce herself, he cut her off. "My office needs attention first thing every morning. Stay invisible during client meetings. And next time, make yourself look more professional. We have standards here." He walked away, leaving the sting of insult in the air. But Elena only kept cleaning, quietly watching. What Marcus didn't know was that every insult, every sneer, every cruel remark was not falling on the ears of a powerless cleaner. They were being recorded in Elena's memory with precision. Because behind the plain uniform stood the daughter of the CEO, preparing to expose the rot festering in his empire, and this was just the beginning. That evening, as others left the building, Elena quietly entered Marcus's office to clean. Papers lay scattered across his desk. One folder caught her attention: diversity hires, damage control. Her father's signature was at the bottom of a memo inside. But something was wrong. The slant of the letters, the spacing of the strokes. It wasn't her father's hand. A forged signature. Elena's heart steadied. She took photographs, carefully returning everything to its place. Marcus Hale wasn't just arrogant. He was a man willing to forge documents to push his agenda. And the deeper she looked, the more she realized this story wasn't about spilled coffee or cruel words. It was about power, and the fight to take it back. Elena moved through the halls of Westbridge Industries with the quiet grace of someone who belonged everywhere, yet appeared to belong nowhere. Most passed her by without even a glance. That invisibility was a weapon. While others dismissed her as part of the background, she was seeing everything. By the end of her first day, a pattern emerged. Marcus's behavior was contagious. Junior executives copied his tone, mocking minority employees when they thought no one noticed. Administrative staff avoided eye contact as if acknowledging her presence could harm their careers. The only kindness she received came from two people. Clara from HR, who greeted her each morning with a smile that carried genuine warmth, and Jonas from IT, who thanked her whenever she emptied his trash. Those small gestures mattered. They stood out against the cold silence. Elena noted every detail in a small leather-bound notebook she carried tucked inside her cleaning cart. She recorded not just insults but the subtle shifts in Marcus's voice, how he became respectful with his white colleagues but cutting and dismissive with staff of color. Those were patterns you would never see from the CEO's chair but were glaring from a janitor's mop bucket. That night, while cleaning Marcus's office, she found the forged memo again. It wasn't just suspicious, it was dangerous. A policy disguised as her father's will. One that would target entire departments labeled as diversity hires. Elena photographed the documents under the soft glow of the desk lamp. Her hand steady though her heart raced. 3 days later, the storm broke open. Elena pushed her cart past the main conference room during a departmental meeting. The door was slightly ajar and Marcus's voice spilled into the hallway. His words sliced through the air like a blade. These divisions are draining resources. Coincidentally, they're also the ones where we place the majority of our diversity recruits. The budget cuts will begin there. Elena froze. Her mop handle tapped against the frame by accident. Heads inside turned sharply. Marcus stepped out, closing the door behind him, his eyes narrowing. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "Cleaning," Elena answered calmly. "I didn't mean to interrupt." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Eavesdropping doesn't fall under your job description." "I wasn't eavesdropping," Elena replied evenly. "But I couldn't help noticing your performance metrics don't reflect the fact that those departments recently had their staff reduced by 30%. That missing data changes everything." Marcus smirked, his voice raised just enough for the executives inside to hear. "I wasn't aware janitors had MBAs. Cleaning supplies are in the closet, not the boardroom." Laughter trickled from behind the glass wall. Some executives looked uncomfortable. Others smirked. Elena simply held his gaze for a beat before returning to her cart. She knew who felt shame and who reveled in cruelty. That knowledge would matter later. Later that evening, as Elena scrubbed the women's restroom, Clara from HR entered. She hesitated before speaking, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry about Marcus. He wasn't always like this. Since Mr. Torres has been away for treatments, Marcus has been changing things, pushing limits. Some of us are just trying to hang on until the board meeting." Elena listened carefully. "And when is the board meeting?" "Next week," Clara answered. "Maybe things will shift then." Elena nodded, saying nothing more. But inside she knew there wouldn't be time to wait. Her father had already texted her that morning. Status report needed. Board pushing for immediate leadership transition. The following day, Marcus called an all-staff meeting in the largest conference room. His email made it clear, everyone means everyone. The custodial staff stood in the back while executives filled the seats closest to the front. The hierarchy was obvious. Marcus began his speech with practiced authority. Westbridge Industries is entering a critical phase. Our new efficiency protocols will streamline operations and maximize shareholder value. He flashed slides on the screen. Extended hours, fewer breaks, harsher metrics. The cuts landed hardest on the lowest level employees. The executives' benefits, of course, were untouched. "Any questions?" Marcus asked in a tone that warned there shouldn't be. The room was silent until Elena raised her hand ever so slightly. Murmurs rippled. Marcus's lips curled in irritation. "The janitor has a question," he announced, drawing a round of uneasy chuckles. "Go ahead, enlighten us." "These new schedules require staff to stay until 7:33 nights a week," Elena said clearly. "Has anyone considered how this impacts employees with families or children to care for?" The silence grew heavier. Executives shifted in their seats. Marcus leaned forward, smirking. "What's your name again?" "Elena." "Well, Elena, let me ask you something. What's your educational background? Where did you get your business degree?" I didn't say— Marcus cut her off sharply. That's right. You didn't. Because someone who pushes a mop for a living doesn't understand what it takes to run a company. These decisions are made by professionals, not cleaning staff. A few nervous laughs scattered across the room. Others kept their eyes glued to their notebooks. Now, Marcus said firmly, if there are no relevant questions, this meeting is adjourned. Executives shuffled out, leaving Elena with her cart. Marcus lingered with 3 senior directors, waiting until the room was almost empty. Then he knocked over a half-filled coffee cup onto the polished table. Oops, he said loudly. Clumsy me. The directors watched as Elena began wiping up the spill. One of them, a sales director named Carter, leaned close. There are other ways to get ahead around here, he whispered suggestively. Be nicer to certain executives and maybe doors will open. Marcus chuckled. Don't waste your breath, Carter. Some people are born to stay in their station. They left, their laughter echoing behind them. Helena kept cleaning, her face calm though inside her resolve burned hotter than ever. She knew then, this wasn't just about exposing Marcus. This was about saving everyone he had been quietly destroying. That night, Elena called her father. Her notes spread across her small apartment table, uniform draped over the chair, her voice steady. I've seen enough, she said. It's time for phase 2. Earlier than planned. Her father's voice was low but sharp. He forged my signature? Yes, and he's dismantling your diversity initiatives. The departments he's targeting are almost entirely staffed by people of color. Samuel sighed heavily. I knew there were problems, but this— Elena, are you sure you're ready? She glanced at her notes, then out the window at the glowing city skyline. I won't let him poison what you built. It ends now. Her father was silent for a moment. Then his voice returned stronger. The board meets in 3 days. Gather everything. Leave nothing to chance. Elena closed her eyes and made a silent vow. Not only would she bring Marcus down, she would rebuild Westbridge into what it should have been all along, and the countdown had begun. The next morning brought a new wave of Marcus's arrogance. He stormed through the executive floor with the swagger of a man who believed victory was already in his grasp. His words carried loudly so everyone nearby could hear. From now on, he barked at the facilities manager, custodial staff must check in every 30 minutes through a new tracking app. Miss a single report and they'll be written up. Efficiency requires discipline. The manager hesitated. Sir, they clean across multiple floors. Stopping every half hour will actually— Marcus's voice dropped into a dangerous growl. Are you questioning me? The manager's shoulders sagged. No, sir. I'll implement it immediately. Within minutes, Elena's phone buzzed with a notification. The new system demanded she take photos of her completed work areas with facial verification to prove she had done the tasks herself. It was humiliating by design, and she knew it. Marcus wasn't simply monitoring performance, he was weaponizing oversight to break spirits. Still, she complied calmly. Every photo, every note, every order was more evidence for the storm she was about to unleash. Later that day, Marcus paraded potential investors through the main conference room. He spoke with the authority of a man who thought the company was already his. As the catering staff bustled around the tables, Marcus snapped his fingers toward Elena, who was cleaning windows nearby. You. Come here. Our catering team seems short today. Serve coffee to our guests. Elena set down her rag and obeyed, moving to the refreshment table. Every movement was graceful, professional, controlled. She poured the first cup for the lead investor, who accepted it with a polite nod. Marcus used the moment to boast. As you can see, Westbridge Industries holds every level of service to the highest standard. Even our custodial staff reflects our values. The investors shifted uncomfortably. The lead one glanced at Elena and gave her a pointed look. Thank you, he said quietly, as if to acknowledge her dignity in the face of humiliation. When the presentation ended and the investors left, Marcus cornered her in the supply closet. He blocked the door with his arm, his eyes sharp with anger. You deliberately made me look weak in there, he hissed. I only did as you asked, Elena replied evenly. Don't play innocent. I saw the way you looked at Davis. Your attitude is poisoning morale. My attitude, sir? That's exactly what I mean, Marcus snapped. You think you're smarter than your position. Let me be clear, you're replaceable. Dozens would take your job tomorrow. Elena tilted her head slightly. Is that a threat, Mr. Hale? It's a reality check, he said coldly. Then with a smirk of satisfaction he added, since you have so much energy for backtalk, you can clean the basement storage. It hasn't been touched in years. He walked away, confident he had crushed her spirit. What he didn't know was that he had just handed her a gift. The basement was forgotten, thick with dust and cobwebs. Dozens of boxes stacked high lined the room, filled with records predating the company's digital systems. Elena's hands grew black with dirt as she shifted through years of files. At first it seemed like routine archives, payroll logs, old contracts, forgotten manuals. But then patterns began to emerge. She found projects started by minority employees whose names disappeared from the records once success arrived. Achievements stripped away, reassigned to white managers. The trail repeated over and over, and in many of those files Marcus Hale's signature appeared. Then, tucked between two old binders, a sealed envelope slipped free. It was addressed to her father. The seal marked confidential whistleblower report. Her breath caught. With careful hands she opened it. Inside lay a detailed complaint about Marcus's discriminatory practices, written 3 years earlier by an anonymous employee. It never reached her father's desk. Someone had intercepted it, buried it here in the dark. Elena folded the letter and slid it into her pocket. Another piece of truth Marcus had tried to smother was now in her hands. The following morning, Marcus summoned her to his office. His tone was unusually smooth, dripping with false kindness. His desk was neat, his chair turned slightly toward the window. "Come in, Elena. Close the door," he said. She obeyed, standing quietly in front of his desk, hands folded. "You've been here, 2 weeks now?" He didn't wait for her answer. "In that time, you've shown unusual interest in our operations, almost as though you're gathering information." He pulled something from his drawer and held it up casually. Her notebook. "Found this in your cart. Very interesting reading." Elena's expression didn't change. "Those are my personal notes about cleaning tasks and areas needing extra attention." His smile tightened. Perhaps it could be seen as documentation for a discrimination lawsuit.
"Do you know how easily I could frame it that way?"
He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "But I recognize ambition when I see it. You could be useful if you know your place." He slid a folder across the desk. A promotion. Head of facilities. More money. An office instead of a mop. All I need is that notebook and your signature on this non-disclosure agreement. Elena glanced at the folder but didn't touch it. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Hale, but I'm satisfied in my current role." His mask cracked, his voice hardening. "Don't be foolish. This opportunity won't come twice. Is there a problem with my performance as a janitor?" she asked calmly. "No. Then I'll continue as assigned. My notes help me remember tasks. Nothing more." His pleasant act collapsed completely. He stood towering over her. "Let me be perfectly clear. I've dealt with troublemakers before. People like you don't last long in companies like this. And tomorrow will seal my control. The board meeting will confirm it." He pointed sharply toward the door. "During that meeting, you'll clean the executive bathroom. I want it spotless for the celebration after. You're dismissed." Elena turned and left, her expression calm. Inside, her resolve was steel. Tomorrow wasn't going to be his celebration. It was going to be his downfall. That evening, she walked quietly into the IT department where Jonas worked late, hunched over a glowing screen. He looked up startled. "Need something?" he asked. She lowered her voice. "I could use your help. I've noticed patterns in how Marcus treats people, especially minorities. I'm gathering evidence." Jonas studied her carefully, suspicion flickering in his eyes. "That's dangerous. People have tried before. Sometimes risk is necessary," she said simply. He sighed heavily, then turned back to his keyboard. "What exactly do you need?" By night's end, Elena had secured digital records, emails, directives, hidden complaints, all pointing to Marcus's deliberate sabotage. Clara from HR quietly slipped her personnel files where Marcus had buried harassment claims. Piece by piece, Elena was building an unshakable case. In her apartment, she laid out an immaculate suit on the bed, polished a leather portfolio, and reviewed every page of evidence. Her janitor's uniform hung over the chair, a disguise she would never wear again after tomorrow. The battle was coming. And Elena was ready. The sun rose over the glass towers of Westbridge, casting long streaks of gold across the lobby floor. Board members arrived one by one, greeted by Marcus with the flawless charm of a man who thought victory was already secured. His suit was pressed to perfection, his smile rehearsed, his confidence unshakable. "Good to see you," he told one director with a firm handshake. "Today is about the future, a future we can build together." No one questioned him. No one suspected the storm about to break over his head. Elena wheeled her cleaning cart along the executive hallway, head slightly bowed. To most, she looked like just another janitor preparing for another long day. But hidden inside her portfolio was everything: emails, forged memos, silenced complaints, and the whistleblower letter buried for years. Her plain uniform would soon be exchanged for the truth. Marcus spotted her and smirked. He gestured toward the security guard. "She's restricted today. Ground floor and executive bathroom only. No exceptions." The guard nodded, avoiding her eyes. Elena only gave a quiet reply. "Understood." Marcus turned back to his companions, smug satisfaction written across his face. He believed he had shut her out. He believed the boardroom was his fortress. He was wrong. Inside the boardroom, the air was heavy with anticipation. The directors took their seats around the polished mahogany table. The walls gleamed with glass panels, reflecting the tense faces of men and women who would soon decide the company's future. Marcus stood at the front, his presentation slides already glowing across the screen. "As you can see," he began, "these departments consistently underperform despite increased investment. My restructuring plan eliminates waste and secures long-term growth." Colorful graphs appeared, red arrows pointing down, green lines pointing up. His voice was smooth, persuasive, designed to soothe doubts and project competence. "And now," he continued, lowering his tone for dramatic effect, "we must face an uncomfortable reality. Mr. Torres's health limits his ability to carry the day-to-day burden. For the sake of stability, leadership continuity must be addressed. Today we take Westbridge into a new era." Silence filled the room. Then a sound broke it. The soft creak of the executive bathroom door opening. Heads turned, Elena stepped inside. But this was not the janitor Marcus had mocked. This was Elena Torres, daughter of the CEO, dressed in a tailored suit, her hair pulled neatly, her portfolio in hand. Each step she took echoed with quiet power. Marcus froze. His face drained of color. Recognition, disbelief, then panic flickered across his features. The directors whispered to one another, stunned. This was the same woman they had seen mopping floors. The same woman Marcus had humiliated in front of them. And now she stood with the poise of someone who commanded the room. Samuel Torres, thinner but dignified, rose from his chair at the head of the table. A smile broke across his face. He extended his arms. "Board members," he said proudly, "allow me to introduce my daughter, Elena Torres." A hush fell over the room. The shock was complete. Elena walked to her father's side, then placed her portfolio on the table. Her movements were calm, deliberate, unhurried. She opened the folder and spread out documents with precise care. "Before Mr. Hale continues," she said, her voice steady and clear, "I'd like to share my observations from 2 weeks working undercover at my father's request." Marcus sputtered, his voice cracking. "This is irregular. Completely out of order. Please continue," Samuel interrupted firmly, his gaze locking on his daughter with full authority. Elena began. She spoke of the insults, the patterns of discrimination, the subtle differences in Marcus's tone toward white and minority employees. She detailed the harassment disguised as jokes, the fabricated performance metrics, the deliberate targeting of vulnerable departments. Her words were precise, not emotional. She let the evidence speak for itself. She slid copies of data across the table. On March 8th, Mr. Hale presented these figures. What he didn't include was the 30% staff reduction in those very departments. When corrected, the numbers show those divisions were outperforming expectations. Directors leaned forward, flipping through pages, their expressions shifting from skepticism to unease. Elena pressed play on an audio file. Marcus's voice filled the boardroom. "Diversity hires require extra management. They drag efficiency down. Sometimes you have to make hard cuts where the optics don't look good." A heavy silence fell. "And here," Elena continued, producing the forged memo, "this report bears my father's signature, but the signature is false. It was used to justify discriminatory policies my father explicitly rejected." Marcus shot to his feet, sweat breaking across his forehead. She planted that. She fabricated all of this. Elena raised her hand calmly. Did I fabricate this letter too? She produced the whistleblower complaint from 3 years ago. Addressed to my father, never received. It describes the same patterns. Intercepted and buried. The directors exchanged dark glances. Some shifted uncomfortably, realizing their silence had enabled this corruption. Marcus's voice rose, desperate now. She's manipulating you. This is a setup. She's nothing but enough. Samuel's voice cut like a blade. We have more than enough evidence. This board will vote, one by one, hands lifted. Every director. Unanimous. Samuel turned to Marcus, his voice calm but final. You are removed from your position, effective immediately. Security will escort you to clear your office. Company property stays here. The doors opened. 2 guards stepped inside. Marcus's face twisted with rage. He locked eyes with Elena. This isn't over, he snarled. I have friends in this industry. You'll regret this, Elena stood. She walked closer, her expression composed. You told me once that cleaning supplies belong in the closet, not the boardroom. Today I'm here to clean house. Marcus's face reddened. The guards took him by the arms and led him out, his furious voice echoing down the hallway before the door shut behind him. Silence filled the boardroom once more. A silence not of peace but of shame. Every director understood they had stood by while Marcus poisoned the culture. And now, with the truth laid bare, there was no going back. The boardroom had emptied, but the tension lingered in the air like smoke after a fire. Elena remained at the table, calmly gathering her documents. Her father watched her with quiet pride, though fatigue pulled at his face. The weight of years, the toll of illness, all were visible, yet in that moment his eyes carried hope. Elena, he said softly, I built this company, but you just saved it. She gave him a small nod, but inside she knew this was only the beginning. Removing Marcus was a victory, but the poison he had spread still lived in the walls, in the policies, and in the minds of those who had laughed along with his cruelty. The next morning, Elena arrived at the office early, no longer in a janitor's uniform. She walked into her new office, once used by a man who thrived on intimidation. She deliberately left the door open. Anyone could step inside. The message was clear. This was no longer a place of secrets. Her first appointment of the day was with Carter, the sales director who had leaned too close and whispered vile suggestions in her ear during her undercover days. He entered with forced confidence, straightening his tie. Quite the show yesterday, he said, trying for charm. But between us, don't you think some of this is a little overblown? Marcus went too far, sure, but some of those things you called harassment, they were just jokes. Elena studied him for a long moment, her expression calm. Jokes, she repeated softly. Like telling a janitor she could advance if she was nicer to certain executives? Carter chuckled nervously. That was just banter. Nothing serious. Elena slid a folder across the desk. 17 similar remarks documented. All from you. All directed at female employees. Would you like to hear them back, word for word? His face paled. This is ridiculous. You can't build a case from harmless comments. She leaned forward, her voice steady but sharp. I don't need to build a case. The case is already built. Here is your severance agreement. Sign it and walk away quietly. Or refuse and face termination with cause and a full investigation into harassment claims. The choice is yours. Carter stared at the paper, his arrogance collapsing into panic. He muttered something under his breath and left without another word. Over the next week, Elena held meeting after meeting. Some executives entered her office trembling, admitting they had stayed silent out of fear. Others tried to defend their actions, insisting they had simply followed Marcus's lead. One marketing director confessed through tears. I knew what he was doing was wrong, but I told myself I had 3 kids in college. If I lost my job, how would I pay for it? I convinced myself silence was safer. Elena listened with compassion. Fear is powerful, she said gently, but accountability is stronger. If you're willing to take responsibility and help rebuild, you'll have a place here. For those who showed genuine remorse, she offered a second chance. For those who clung to the old culture, she offered the door. By the end of the week, the executive floor looked entirely different. Desks once occupied by sycophants now belonged to people who had been overlooked for years. Jonas from IT, who had been silenced and ignored, was promoted to Chief Technology Officer. His proposals on cybersecurity, once dismissed, were now fast-tracked for implementation. Clara from HR, who had quietly carried kindness through years of hostility, became the new Senior Director of Human Resources. Her first task: rebuild trust in a department Marcus had corrupted. But change was not celebrated by all. Marcus, though disgraced, still had allies in the shadows. Former colleagues whispered about him at industry clubs. He painted himself as the victim of family politics, a man wronged by nepotism rather than undone by his own corruption. His words reached sympathetic ears and rumors spread. Then one morning a letter arrived in Elena's office. It was from Marcus's lawyer. A formal complaint, wrongful termination, demand for reinstatement, compensation for damages to his reputation. Elena read it without expression. She placed it neatly beside her portfolio of evidence. Moments later, her phone buzzed. A notification from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. They had opened a formal investigation into Marcus's conduct, requesting Westbridge's cooperation. The timing was no accident. Marcus had declared war in the only way left to him. Elena called a private meeting with her father and the company's legal team. 3 folders were placed on the table. Option 1, the chief counsel explained. We settle quietly.
NDA, financial compensation, Marcus disappears.
Minimal public fallout. Option 2, we cooperate with investigators but keep it out of the public eye. Protect the company's reputation, avoid headlines. Option 3, full transparency. We admit what happened, expose the failures, and commit to change publicly. Samuel looked at his daughter. His voice was calm but heavy. What do you recommend? Transparency, Elena said without hesitation. Settlements protect Marcus. Silence protects the problem. But truth protects future victims. If Westbridge is going to survive, it must survive with integrity. Her father leaned back, studying her with quiet pride. Then transparency it is. The decision shook the industry. Companies never chose exposure when silence could be bought. Reporters flooded Westbridge demanding statements. Elena gave only one interview to a respected business journal. Leadership requires more than strategies and profits, she told the journalist. It requires seeing the people others ignore. From a janitor's closet, you can see truths that an executive office blinds you from. The article exploded across the industry. The headline read, CEO's daughter goes undercover, exposes corruption, forces reform. But Marcus wasn't finished. He built a new story, one where he was the victim. He called allies at competitor firms, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. A personal conflict, a power grab by Samuel's daughter. He wanted sympathy, not justice. For a time, his version gained traction, until 3 former employees of Westbridge came forward. Women who had suffered under his leadership. Men who had been cut for daring to speak against him. Their stories matched Elena's evidence. Their courage destroyed Marcus's narrative, and the stage was set for the next confrontation, one that wouldn't happen in secret but in full view of the industry.